We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered, and Misa back. Hello. I had 1 week off, and now here I am. And a big thank you to Lee Overstreet for filling in for me last week while I was away.
Yes, it was very nice.
It was.
We had a nice, reasonably length podcast.
And it's evident that I am not the reason that we don't get to every single question every week.
Yeah, we know that. No one was ever confused by that. No one ever thought, I wonder if it's Tom or Rob that they're shutting it down. If you're watching this on YouTube, I am moist.
Oh.
Okay? I am hot.
I see.
Oh God, it's not even that hot in here. It's the perfect time of year in Florida where the AC doesn't kick on because it's not hot enough outside to make it hot enough inside for the AC to kick on, which means that the 90% humidity in which I live is in my house, and it makes me, and then I cycled this morning, as I do almost every morning, and I am still sweating from that. So if you are looking at me on YouTube and you're like, that boy needs a towelette or something like that, you are correct. I may just get up and dab myself or something. I don't know what it is. But I have lots of liquids, for those of you that are concerned about such things. I have lots of liquids from which to consume, so I shouldn't be getting up for those. I have to go to the bathroom, but I won't be getting up because I need more things to drink, unless Rob makes me go extra long. Well,
weather is strange because it's been abnormally chilly in the Vancouver area. It has been very gray and overcast and rainy, that's very normal for us. But usually getting into May, it starts feeling like springtime. I'm convinced we're going to have no springtime this year. It's going to jump straight from winter to summer. I'm convinced that's what'll happen here.
So every year at this time, my wife and I are of the age where we start getting on in years a little bit, and she's worried about that change in her in her life that women go through. And this time of year, every year, she's convinced it's happening.
And it's like hot flashes.
It's because it's so miserable in the house, so she's constantly turning down the AC, trying to get it comfortable in here, and then she gets cold, and then everybody's cold, but that's the only way to dehumidify. No, you're like, why don't you get a dehumidifier? It's not enough. It's Florida. It's like living in a sponge. It sucks. So tell us how you really feel, Tom, about Florida. It sucks.
Well, you know what, folks? It's not going to get better no matter where we live, because the temperatures aren't exactly evening out throughout the world. They're only going to polar extremes. So that's right. Good times.
So we are, so we had a good time with Lee last week. Thank you very much, Lee, for filling in. It's good. It was weird because I'm used to you saying certain things at certain times after I say certain things, and he just stared at me. I was like, so you're not going to say the thing? You're not going to say the thing you're supposed to say? I don't care. I expect people to operate the way I expect them to operate. That's the way it works. Yes. It's a little bit of that autism coming through on my side of the family. Thank you very much, Lee, for
thank you,
for filling in. We appreciate it. All right. So how was your vacation?
Very relaxing, which was my goal, so I was very pleased with that. It actually felt like I was away for longer than 5 days in a good way.
Did you unplug while you were gone?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, not completely, because I don't want to get way behind on emails and stuff like that. So very basic, but mostly I didn't do too much electronic and online stuff, and that was the whole goal. So it was nice. It was very relaxing, and
last summer when we went on vacation, we didn't unplug. I mean, we had Wi-Fi and everything, and I did a little bit of work while I was gone. But instead of watching the Olympics were going on, instead of watching TV, on a streaming service, we were kind of watching it live, and it felt like I had gone back in time.
Traveling back.
I'm like, what is this commercial thing of which I am being subjected to every 3 minutes for whatever reason?
I know some people do the 100% unplug online, not at all type of thing. I'm like, I would actually find that more stressful than just cutting back.
My wife talks about that constantly. She's like, we should go on a 3-day, put away your phones and just, I'm like, I don't want to talk to my children that much.
Because like stressing about having to catch up when you get back as well. I'm like, no, that would be more stress. So
yeah, I just looked at my emails because I hadn't checked emails on this computer in a while. And it's my Tom Andrew account and Tom at AVRant account is on this computer. And I checked it and there was like 250 emails.
Yeah, there you go.
On one of them. I'm like... Well, that's something I'm going to have to go through at some point. So, yeah, I'm with you. Did you watch anything while you were gone? Or
yes, I did watch Death on the Nile. So that is the follow-up.
I got up to the murder.
Yep.
On that, and then it was late, and my kids and wife who were watching it with me all went to bed, and I said, "Okay, well, we'll finish it later."
Yeah, this is the newer version, the Kenneth Branagh sequel to Murder on the Orient Express. He also did an update to Murder on the Orient Express earlier. So, I quite enjoyed that movie. It was well done. It is an older Agatha Christie mystery, so there's no like.
I felt like the part I watched was overly long. Like it took way too long for somebody to die in that movie.
Well,
yes, this is a murder mystery. Let's get on.
Yeah,
with
the murder mystery is about maybe 3/5 of the way into the movie, so it is definitely all lead up and meeting the characters and everything.
You can kind of see like there's all these clues being left, and you're not really sure where they're going, which is kind of what you want in something. I haven't read the book, and
I never read the book. I saw the much older movie version, but I saw that years ago, and my recollection is that I prefer this newer version. But I was a much younger person with a different taste when I saw the much older version, so who knows what I would think of it now.
Right, who knows? Yeah, I saw. So I did something a little bit different this week. I went to Rotten Tomatoes and clicked on Netflix and saw what were like the top rated things there in romantic comedies specifically. But then I did it for everything. But I started with romantic comedies, I believe, because that was, or maybe family friendly, I don't remember, because my wife wanted to watch something. Okay. So we saw Hunt for the Wilderpeople.
Okay.
Wilderpeople?
I can't really say I'm familiar with that one.
It is. I can't say I was either. Sam Neill is in it, right, from Jurassic Park, and the boy who was in Deadpool 2, who was the kid's sidekick in Deadpool 2, is in there. And then it was directed and written by, and I can't say his name. He did Thor, the most recent Thor movie. What's his name? Taika
Waititi.
That's him. He wrote and directed it. So if in the Thor movie, which was Ragnarok, the Jeff Goldblum's like guard lady that's with him in there, she's in that movie as well. Okay. And so Taika is like kind of it's like one of his go-to actors. Yeah,
a lot of directors have their collection of
like what's
series
his,
players almost.
Yeah, what's his name? Who puts his brother in everything?
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard. Yes, I was going to say Cunningham, and I knew that wasn't right. Anywho, good movie. I would not call it great. Okay. I mean, it's got an amazing Rotten Tomatoes score. It is a good movie. It is enjoyable. It's not quickly paced, but it's not too slow. Things kind of go along, but it isn't exactly the most unpredictable of movies. Okay. I was making jokes or laughing and saying, "Oh, that's just like," or "that." Oh, that reminds me of, and then they would say that in the movie right afterwards. Gotcha. So it's a good movie to watch. I mean, for the most part, with kids, there's a little bit of. I would say I would say that was a good movie to watch with kids. It's not any worse than Bambi. If that gives you an indication of what might happen during that movie. But good movie. I also watched Freaks, which is on Netflix as well. Both these, of course, are on Netflix because that's what I was searching.
Is that a movie or a series? Isn't Freaks a series?
It is a movie.
Oh, it's a movie.
It may be. There may also be this. So it's about a little girl and her father, and there's powers involved in that sort of thing. But it's a very small movie. And there's not a lot of special effects, and those that are there are mostly pretty good, but you can tell that they didn't have a whole lot of budget for that.
Yep, so that happens.
But I thought that was pretty good too. So both those have very good Rotten Tomatoes scores, and I mean they're both worth looking at, watching. Freaks is neither one of them I would consider to be scary or really all that suspenseful. There's a little bit of suspense, but Freaks more so than Hunt for the Wilderpeople, which is more of a sort of a coming of age, not really, like sort of bonding thing.
Okay.
But Sam Neill's in it, and it's not a huge movie, but it's all shot in New Zealand, so it's gorgeous.
Yes.
In the outback of New Zealand.
Yeah, definitely. The Nile has some very beautiful cinematography in it too. So very, very well made. Kenneth Branagh knows how to shoot a film. So
my wife's phone broke. She has an iPhone X, so I went and bought her a new one, which is new to her, which is I think I got her an 11 because it was like $300 cheaper than the other ones.
iPhone's 11s are pretty cheap now.
So I got her an 11, and that came with 3 months of Apple Plus. So
we started... nice. Well done.
So
well done.
We watched we binge watched the first 4 episodes of Ted Lasso, which everybody's talking about. There is no way that show was ever going to live up to the hype that people gave for me.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, it got a little bit beyond.
So people were like, it's the most feel-good, wonderful show you've ever seen. I'm like, it's fine.
The first season is very good. I very much enjoyed the first season. I really did enjoy it. The second season, not as much.
That's what I have heard. And I watched the first episode of Severance last night, which was also very interesting. And... that's all I'll say about that.
Okay.
So I'm going to start the foundation too. So Severance is something that I wasn't really sure was going to be okay for my wife, because I watched the first 5 minutes and went, "This is just not for you." But then it got better, or more.
You should definitely watch Mythic Quest on there while you have access. Make sure you watch Mythic Quest.
Mythic Quest. Okay.
Mythic Quest. It is excellent.
Yeah,
it's hilarious, and there are a couple of episodes. There's an episode each season where it's basically not part of the regular narrative at all. It's like a complete side quest with all actors who aren't the regular cast at all. And I think those are the 2 best episodes in the whole series, which is not to denigrate the rest of the series. I'm like, they stand out in an excellent way. Okay.
I will say, so every once in a while on my Xbox, I make the mistake of futzing with the audio settings and switching it from Dolby Atmos. Mm-hmm. It's all set for bitstream out, which for whatever reason barely works.
Yeah.
But I set it for Dolby instead of Dolby Atmos. I put it to DTSX because I'm like, I kind of like DTSX. So the Hunt for the Wilderpeople, I think. And I think even the Ted Lasso stuff, I had it for that, and the overhead effects were just like insane. There was so much going on.
It shouldn't quite be like that. That's a DTSX thing going on there.
Yeah. So that was DTS, and then I was also getting this weird popping noise every once in a while with DTSX.
Fun.
So which I have experienced before. I keep thinking, it was probably something else. You could turn it back, Tom. You can't. You need to set it on Atmos, okay? Because if you don't set it on the Atmos, at least in my system, for whatever reason, that's what happened. So I did burn myself with that. But I just, for the love of God, why can't they get that right? Why can't they get the audio right on the Xbox? It is a computer. People, fix it. All right. Good. All right. Let's get to this podcast thingy that we do. So this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You can go to avrant.com, listen to some of our past episodes, find all our show notes and such. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. Contact Rob directly. Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter, for now, is at First Reflect. I don't know how much I'm going to stick around there. I don't know what's going to happen with Twitter. I did sign up for Counter Social. We'll see if that turns out to be horrible as well. But I haven't done. I don't even know what that is. I literally don't care. I don't know. I looked up for alternatives, and they're like the anti-troll Twitter apparently. So I just wanted to reserve my handle, so I'm at First Reflect over there as well. All right, come find me. Reflect everywhere, wherever he may be. You don't have to worry about finding me because I don't post anything ever. Yeah. I am Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter is at avrant_Tom for all of the non-posts I do. Mm-hmm. Right. Listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, and that will send you to a PayPal donation site. So we want to thank Raf for doing that this week. Thank you very much, Raf. Yeah, Raf, thank you for the PayPal donation. Very much appreciate your financial support. You can also go to patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to be a monthly contributing, supporting listener type person. Every month, they'll take some money from you, a minimum of $1, so $12 a year. Not a huge investment. and give most of it to us. So right now we have 142 patrons over at patreon.com, including Dale. So thank you very much to all of our patrons.
Yes, indeed. Patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation, it is the beginning of a new month. So that's where some of our listeners dropped off once again. Our patrons dropped off once again. So 142 patrons is what the number shows today. Dale,
so close to 150, Rob.
That's right. I know.
We are so close.
We can get over that hump one day. But Dale, thank you for being one of them. Thank you for being a member of the 2 Hour Plus Club as well.
Yeah. So if you can't support us financially, we completely understand. Just do something to support us, and we will mention you here. So Brandon tried to help me with some suggestions for the Harmony remote that is giving my parents some difficulties. He says regarding the cable box, he recalls that his last cable box he had to be set for either RF or IR commands. It would not work with both at the same time. So maybe a firmware update or cable box reset messed that up. Worth checking out. And for other devices that stopped working, including the Heo soundbar, the Harmony Elite has its own IR transmitter built into the remote itself, and within the Harmony setup software you can specify which IR transmitter controls each device. So he ran into troubles when his projector was set up to only receive IR commands from the remote itself and not from the hub. So another thing worth checking in the settings, which I will have to remember to do.
Right.
I got this email. I read this email.
Okay.
I immediately forgot this email existed.
Right.
It has been so. I often sound very absent-minded on this podcast and tell Rob because I'm going to forget. Yes, I have 3 children, one of which is graduating high school this year and going off into college, so we are dealing with that. Both my elder kids are on the track team on pole vault, and they both won their local competition. They went to the division. I don't know what it's called, like the area one, but they're in different areas. It's not, because they're going to regionals next, so they keep going up. So at this point, they are one step below states is where they're going to next. I think it's called divisionals is where they're going, but they're in different divisions because of the size of the schools that they go to. Even though they're in the same town, their schools are about 10 miles apart, but they're in different divisions. So they're both going to divisionals, and they're, and then if they make it past that, they go to states. At the same time, one of my sons is climbing, and he made it past what they call regionals, and he's going what they call divisionals, and they're going to regionals, which is like the entire southern the southern half of the United States, or southeastern half of the United States, or something like that. So he's going to that level, and the next level after that, I think, is nationals. So he's going to that this coming up. So I got a couple things going on. Okay. So when I say that I read this email and then forgot about this email, it's because I got 20 other emails that were my wife saying, if we don't do this right now, our sons are not going to go to college. So we got a movie code from Greg as well. So thank you very much for that, Greg.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
And we got notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going during everything.
Yes.
From Mike Jason Dale, who says, repetition reinforces retention, so he appreciates our willingness to revisit questions from episode to episode, and Dan would be happy if we did 2 shows a week. 2 hours isn't enough.
Not sure everyone feels that way, Dan, but I appreciate it.
I know I don't feel that way. I wouldn't mind doing more. It's a lot of work, and we can't exactly quit our day jobs to
Definitely
do this.
not.
So if we ever got to the point where our Patreon was supporting us enough that we could cut back on hours, we will gladly. I'll do a podcast a day. I don't care. If the first half of my day is nothing but podcasting, that'd be great.
Need about 100x times on the supporters there.
Yes.
But
yes.
I'm not anticipating that.
Not yet.
But
I'm just being realistic. People are like, I've had people say crazy things to me before, like when after I gave away the first Bob Moore book and I started charging for the second one, they're like, well, after you make all your money, maybe you'll give this one away too. I'm like, how much money do you think I'm going to make from this thing?
Indeed.
It's a self-published novel in a very niche, and I'm not exactly spending thousands of dollars on art, covers that'll help sell it and marketing and everything else. How much money do you think I'm going to make here? But yes, we would love to do more podcasts. We would love to spend more time doing these things. It's just, this is how much we can do for what is essentially, free.
It's a complete labor of love. Yes.
It's a labor of love.
Anything financial this. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Dale. And thank you, Dan, once again. Definitely appreciate the notes of encouragement and gratitude for keeping the podcast going. Big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
All right, we got some news. Sony has announced 3 new Ultra HD projectors, all with laser light engines. Sony's X1 Ultimate for projector processing chip, because
that's what's in the...
What are they going to name the next one, Rob?
I don't know.
Ultimate X?
They'll have to be the Elite or something like that. But yes, that's same as the chip found in the GTZ 380, that monstrous $80,000, 10,000 lumen beast. So they're just like, it's the same chip. We put it in these 3 as well.
All right. It's got brand new SXRD panels that have Ultra HD resolution, which is 3840 by 2160 rather than actual 4K resolution, which is 4096 by 2160. So,
That's what Sony's previous 4K projector models have. That's what the JVC 4K projector models have, which basically means that since all of our sources are 16 by 9, they're 3840 by 2160 or 1920 by 1080, it means that the genuine 4K resolution projectors always have little black bars on the left and right, which are projected onto the frame of your screen, and a lot of people are like, why doesn't it use every pixel that's available? So in that way, this is helpful. Now it is 3840 by 2160 in these brand new Sony SXRD 4K projectors.
Anyways, they start at $6,000 for the XW5000 ES. It's the smallest and lightest of the trio at only 28 pounds, rated for 2,000 lumens and 95% of DCI-P3 color. Excuse me. It only lists dynamic contrast, so is a useless infinity to 1 figure, which is all the way on to all the way off.
That the lasers can turn off in a completely black screen. Yes,
that's right. And when you turn something off, you divide by
zero,
yes. Whatever. So it's infinity. Despite costing $6,000, it's 1.6 zoom wide dynamic range optics lens is all manual, no motorization, thus no lens memories. It has a lens memory. It's called your hand. Go up there. You remember.
It's not
remember
a button
how far
press
you turned it
on the remote.
Yeah. So that's the 5000 ES.
That's
the
right.
XW6000 ES goes for a cool $12,000, so double that.
Double the price.
It gets all the lens upgrades we would expect: 2500 lumens with a motorized 2.1 times zoom. Advanced crisp focused lens with a floating focus system for edge-to-edge sharpness. Lens range shift is also motorized and it's larger than the XW5000 or whatever. I don't know. The chassis is also a bit larger and heavier at 31 pounds. The flagship, so we had the 5000, the 6000, and now we're up to the 7000 ES, comes at $28,000.
Yes,
so more than double.
$28,000. Yes, it's a lot.
That's a lot of money. Specs up to 3200 lumens, and doing so apparently costs a heck of a lot since the rest of the specs are the same as a 6000.
There might be some difference in the lens, but it's brighter, and the lens might be a little different, but all the specs other than the lumen count are the same.
That's nice and bright.
For a
HDR is going to look good. Hey, so next time somebody wants to get like a bigger than the 120-inch screen, we can say this is the projector for you.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. You want to get a 150-inch screen, this is your projector.
There's a similar price jump in, well, not really similar.
I'm going to say, no, it's not.
But in JVC's lineup, you're going from the NZ8 to the NZ9. There's a big price jump, and again, it's the lens and the brightness is what changes.
Yeah, there. I broke all that down on AV Gadgets, but they broke it down pretty well for you, like in their marketing material. They weren't trying to obfuscate it at all. So all 3 models are IMAX enhanced and have V-stretch for an outboard anamorphic lens if you want to add one. They also have very low input lag for gaming, but here's where we get into their limitations. All three models only include, oh my God, are you kidding me? HDMI 2.1 inputs, no 2.1.
No, HDMI 2.0 inputs.
That's what
not
I said.
HDMI 2.1.
Oh, that's what I said. I said both. Okay. I said 2.1 twice. So it's 2.0, not 2.1.
Correct.
So the signal input is limited to 4K 60 or 1080p 20, no 4K 120. I said 20, didn't I? 120.
You did. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can do
1080p
4K 60 or
120.
they say 2K 120, but that means 1920 by 1080, 120 frames per second. But it means 18 gigabits per second. That's what you've got on these. 18 gigabits per second, not 40, not 48. These are 4K 60.
So according to John Archer from Forbes, Sony informed him that these projectors have been in the works for a long time, and adding HDMI 2.1 just wasn't in the cards. Early comparisons are making claims that the black levels and contrast of the 12,000 XW5000 basically fall right in between JVC's 11,000 NZ7 and their 16,000 NZ8.
You need to say dollars in there because we got a lot of numbers. So
We do. Okay, let's try again.
The Sony XW6000 is $12,000.
Right.
And from the early comparisons now, I don't think these were like fully calibrated and all that, but this was kind of like take it out, see what the black level and contrast looks like. So Sony's new XW6000, that's the $12,000 model that's in the middle of this new Sony lineup. They were like, compared to the $11,000 JVC NZ7, which is like their entry-level laser 4K projector in JVC's lineup, they're like, the black level looks a little bit better. The contrast looks a little bit higher on the Sony for that extra $1,000, but not quite as deep a black level and as quite a good contrast as the $16,000 JVC NZ8. So it fits itself right in between there. Now, all three of those models, the JVC NZ7, the Sony XW6000, and the JVC NZ8, they all have fully motorized lens. They've got the lens memories. They've got all that. But both of the JVCs can do 4K 120. They can also do 8K. They can take an 8K
60,
signal, which the Sonys cannot. The NZ7 will use its 4K resolution panel twice per frame. So it isn't actually showing you every pixel of 8K, but the NZ8 will use its 4K resolution panel 4 times per frame and actually show you every pixel of an 8K signal in that NZ8. So the JVCs are still doing some things that the Sonys cannot do. Obviously 4K 120, but then also on the color side, all of these Sonys, even the $28,000 XW7000, they top out at 95% of DCI-P3. Now, they are not bothering with an optional color filter that the JVC NZ8 and NZ9 have. They have an optional color filter that reduces the light output but widens the color gamut to like 99% of DCI-P3. So there are still some trade-offs here. There are, of course, the people who are like, oh, these Sonys are new, and the prices, like at first blush, they look like they're lower than JVC's because the 5,000 is $6,000, whereas the MP5 from JVC is $7,000. So, there's price.
And that's a lamp based too, right?
Yeah, the MP5 is also lamp based. And then you've got this $12,000 XW6000 that competes somewhat with the $16,000 NZ8, but is actually kind of closer to the $11,000 NZ7. And then it's $28,000 for that XW7000, the flagship, versus $26,000 for the NZ9 from JVC.
Right.
And on paper, the NZ9 has the Sony beat in every way except for the Sony is claiming 100 lumens more brightness. But I'm like, that at 3200 versus 3100, this is not a noticeable amount. So in no way do I think these Sonys crush the JVCs. Absolutely not. In a certain very obvious way of 4K 120 support and 8K support, the JVCs do things that these Sonys cannot do. But I think it's good that we have both. I think that having these as options, because one of these might just fit exactly what you want, and they're competitive. They're competitive with each other. Yeah.
Right. It does seem like that $6,000 one is probably going to be the one that I'm most likely to recommend, simply because
it is the lowest price to get laser and full actual 4K resolution. Because, of course, the Epsons are still using 1080p panels that they're wobbling 4 times per frame. Now, you're still getting all 4K pixels to your eye, but they're wobbling the frame. So I'm glad that all of these exist, because we've got a range now from $4,000 to $28,000. And there's something within that range to work for you. So that's good.
So Sony is, of course, touting their processing, including their object-based HDR remaster and super resolution that can compare on-screen images to a database in order to enhance colors and sharpness. I always love it when something tries to make sharpness better, because that's never, ever added an artifact, ever.
People always love it in still images.
They're also using their dynamic HDR enhancer, which, to be clear, is still a single tone map, but then frame-by-frame processing to enhance contrast after that. So, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's another thing where, on a technical level, the JVCs have an advantage. They're doing actual frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, whereas with the Sony, it is still a single tone map. That means some highlight detail might just be clipped off. It might be gone, and it will not be retrieved, and then they're applying processing after the fact to make the darkers darker and the brighters brighter, things like that. So it's the end result, right? You put them side by side, you turn some of the processing on in one of them and off in the other. Like, you can make them probably look very competitive. You can probably make one look more pleasing than the other. Will it actually be more accurate to the original signal? Well, you probably want to turn all the processing off in both of them if you want to actually get to, pure accuracy to the original signal. So I think there will be a lot of trading back and forth here, but to me, the obvious one is if you want 4K 120, then you're not getting these new Sonys.
Yeah, you're not getting them at all. Yeah. All right, Yamaha has released a firmware to enable 4K 120 and HDR10 Plus on their Aventage receivers, the ones that have been promising it for how many years? 2?
I know. At least 1.5 at this point, yes.
But VRR and auto low latency modes are still missing, which has prompted me to start an article, which I have not finished yet, but I'm going to write this week almost certainly, which is titled something along the lines of "Stop buying things that are promising updates." Just
absolutely. Yeah.
Stop it.
If it doesn't do it out of the box, do not count on it.
It wasn't really that long ago when I would not have said that about AV receiver manufacturers, because I used to make fun of Emotive all the time because they did it, but honestly, that was just me poking fun at a company that legitimately makes good products but never should have started selling processors, no matter how many times they bought Sherwood, whatever it was called, whatever that company was that they bought that made processors or receivers. It was just me poking fun at them because their products are all, for the most part, things I recommend and I like. So giving them a hard time about the one thing they can't seem to get correct is, I don't know, me chiding a friend. But it wasn't that long ago with AV receivers, and they said that there would be a firmware update. That firmware update often came before you could actually get the receiver home.
Sure, yeah.
Like you would buy it, and somebody would say, or the reviewer would say, "Hey, I found that this thing doesn't work, but the company has told me that that's a known issue, and by the time it hits the shelves, there'll be a firmware update that will fix it." And that was true. And then HDMI 2.1 came out.
Yeah, HDMI 2.1 really messed things up. But Yamaha, this was way behind. I guess they never put a date on it, so we can't actually say it's behind schedule. But it took much longer than we anticipated. And for them to still not have variable refresh rate support
they
is
just never
shocking.
They never should have said anything. They never should have said. Yeah. They promised, like Denon was like, "We know it's a problem. We don't know what we're going to do about it yet." That's what Denon said, and then eventually they released that stupid box thingy that, and everybody was like, "Well, I still want more than this," and they said, "Well, give us $200 and you can have one that has 3
switching
HDMI inputs or outputs or whatever it was," and fine, fine, but that's. They never should have said that they're going to push a firmware update because people have been waiting for it and they felt locked into it. And maybe they were legally locked into it because they said it. I don't really know. But this has been a debacle. And it has soured me on any company promising to update, because I just don't, I can no longer believe that.
Just in time for PlayStation 5 actually getting VRR, because that got that just recently. Yamaha has finally delivered 4K 120, but not VRR. So
right.
Anyway, it'll come eventually, hopefully.
Vincent Teo from HD TV Test has explained why Samsung's new S95B QD-OLED TVs look more vibrant than LG OLEDs even after calibration. Much like Samsung's QLED TVs, Samsung is using an inaccurate
Electro-optical transfer function, EOTF.
Yeah, EOTF. That raises the average picture level and makes everything appear brighter than the signal actually called for. Furthermore, colors are oversaturated, even the most accurate picture mode. But what Samsung has done is more nefarious than that. If you put up a 5%, 10%, or 20% window test pattern, the TV will actually detect that and deliver accurate EOTF and color saturation. So other calibrators are understandably reporting that these new Samsung QD OLEDs are very accurate. But Vincent compared the images to a $30,000 studio gaming monitor and couldn't explain initially why the QD-OLED looked brighter and more saturated. By switching his test pattern windows to non-standard sizes, such as 9% or 2%, Vincent revealed how the EOTF and color saturation are inaccurate, except when you're specifically using standard test pattern window sizes. Yeah. So basically, they Volvo'd this, right?
Right.
Volvo did that with their catalytic converters or whatever.
The system.
Yeah, they're like, oh, you're gonna, we'll make it look accurate when you're running your test, but then when you actually use it in performance, we'll do these other things to it because we know that that'll trick your eye into thinking that this is better. So I'll be honest with you, people have been bad mouthing the heck out of Samsung TVs for a long time, including you.
They haven't been my favorite, that's for sure.
Well, but you've always said, okay, well, here's the one you can buy, and here's the other one you can buy, and that sort of thing. But Samsung is really just sort of like, it feels to me like there's a bit of desperation going on there, where they are trying very hard to keep competitive without actually making the changes they need to be competitive, if that makes sense.
In this case, it's unnecessary. These QD OLEDs are genuinely excellent in a lot of ways. I don't actually have a problem if their standard picture mode, what comes out of the box, or even just what they call standard or whatever, if you switch to it, is a little bit goosed. It's a little bit brighter. The colors are a little bit oversaturated. Like, if that's what you want to do because it catches people's eyes, I don't even have a problem with that. I just want one picture mode, because they all have 6, 7, 8 different picture modes that you can choose from. I want one that is accurate to the signal, and I don't think that's too much to ask.
It isn't.
Also, if they're able to do that specifically at 5, 10, and 20% test pattern windows, clearly the panel itself is capable of being accurate. It's not as though there's something about the panel itself that prevents it from being accurate. So to not provide at least one picture mode where you just have accurate EOTF tracking, accurate color saturation, to not provide that is just, to me, it's strange. But the point is, they're like, look, we know that, people on YouTube and even ones who actually do a full calibration, this is the way they're going to calibrate it. We're going to give them measurements that appear accurate. When they put their meter on it, it's going to look like it's accurate, but then the rest of the time, when they're just viewing actual content, everything's going to look a little bit brighter. All the colors are going to look a little bit deeper and more saturated, and they're going to say, this looks better, this looks subjectively better than LG's OLEDs, than Sony's regular OLEDs, than Panasonic's OLEDs, whatever it is. But if you are a purist, as Vincent Teo is, and he's got the $30,000 studio grading monitor where he can do it 1% at a time and get it absolutely bang on, and he's comparing things to that, he's like, well, actually the LG OLEDs, if you calibrate them, are the most accurate ones outside of Panasonic that we can't get in North America. So, he's got these ones where he's got the Samsung QD OLED right next to that reference monitor, right next to an LG C1 from last year. It's like, if you actually look at the brightness and the color saturation, the LG C1 is coming closer after full calibration, because there are these undefeatable things that the Samsung QD OLED
I wonder if you can get into the service menus and fix this.
Well, the other thing is Sony is going to have their QD OLEDs, which is Samsung panels, but Sony processing. And again, there's nothing about the panel that can't be accurate inherently. So the Sonys are going to cost more, but if you want a truly accurate QD OLED, it's probably going to be the Sony ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, comments. Jason. Jason is the head of... Oh, am I supposed to say his last name? Is that why this is
Well, I just put
here?
it in there because, I mean, he's actually from a company, but you can say it or not. It doesn't matter to me.
I can't. It needs a vowel.
I think it's Ehrlich. I think that's
Ehrlich?
I think that's
don't
how
know.
it's pronounced.
Anyways, Jason is the head of sales development for Kinetics Noise Control and has been a listener of ours for the last couple of months as he prepares to build his own personal home theater. So it was Kismet that we ended up talking about their VersaTune 2 1/8-inch thick absorption panels. He wanted to help clarify a few things. If you remember correctly, this is the one that somebody asked about that was, I think, more expensive than other things.
Well, it's
but then it was tuned lower.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit more expensive than just fiberglass, but it was tuned lower than what we'd expect from a 2-inch or 2 1/8-inch thick. So I speculated that maybe they've got a membrane in there, like what GIC does with their variable tuning thing, that they put a membrane on there, because the frequency response graphs looked like what we would expect if there were a membrane in there. But he heard us talking about it. He was like, I appreciate that you did a pretty fair take, but let's clarify exactly what's going on. Straight from the horse's mouth. Can't do better.
So Kinetics hard side panels are fiberglass and have been around for about 40 years. The name came from the fact that back then the only other panels with nice clean edges all used aluminum frames that increased price and weight. Kinetics used a hardener directly on the fiberglass edges to reduce price and weight. And since so many commercial customers and business have used hard side panels for so many years now, the name has stuck. So this is how a lot of companies do these things.
Well, and it also literally came from it has hard sides.
Yes.
So perhaps not the most creative, but also it was 40 years ago, and it was for commercial customers at the time primarily. So that all makes sense.
Yeah. So the VersaTune and TAD panels were developed because they found that when looking at the entire environment of a given room, there are often materials already present that absorb only high frequencies, things like thick carpet and drapes, furniture, for example. If only hard side panels are used, including the thicker versions, you might end up with overly damped high frequencies, while still not having enough low frequency absorption. So it's about getting the right mix of panels unique for each room so that decay times are nice and even over a very broad range of frequencies. Regular VersaTune is a bit more expensive than hard side, but not drastically so. Regular VersaTune is all fiberglass and really is a composite of different densities like hard side. There are different thicknesses available, with thicker absorbing lower, of course. But since we talked about wanting panels that absorb down to the crossover region, Kinetics developed their VersaTune low frequency, the VTLF. It is a vinyl and fiberglass membrane panel specifically tuned for 80 hertz with quite limited absorption pretty much everywhere else. The big difference is that it remains only 2 1/8 inches thick. Getting that performance requires tight manufacturing tolerances, so VersaTune low frequency is considerably more expensive. I don't know what considerably means.
I don't have price points on anything. Those are not shared publicly. And the thing is, he's like, yes, primarily Kinetics deals business to business, commercial applications. They're starting to venture a little bit more into homes now. But so it's because of that, it's like, the wholesale prices that they'd give to a business partner, that's not what a end customer would end up paying. And that business partner is going to set their own prices. So we don't have.
It flummoxes me when there's companies that still operate.
Oh, really?
Purely from business to business.
Oh,
yeah,
that's very common, though.
I know it is, but especially in this
I know,
field,
but going consumer direct, that's a completely different ball of wax. So
I'm sure I don't understand all the logistics of it. But yeah.
So this
is a product people might want, and there are people who would definitely pay for a panel that's this thickness, and I mean, even if they just sold this one. To consumers, this one would sell because there are, for good or ill, there's people out there who absolutely think that they only need a panel at the crossover frequency.
And I mean, this is essentially a tuned membrane. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the graph that they've got for it, which was measured by a third party. And so, I mean, we're seeing like a pretty peaky absorption response right at 80 hertz. It is a tuned membrane at 80 hertz. There's no question about it. Then we're also seeing one that is at exactly 4 times 80 hertz at 320 hertz. So that is clearly the harmonic that is being picked up by the same panel. I would have almost anticipated seeing a bigger dip right at 160 because at exactly twice the frequency, you'd be exactly out of phase. And I would expect to see a bigger it would actually be a resonance at that point, because we're looking at absorption in this. This isn't a frequency response graph. We're looking at an absorption coefficient in the graph.
This would be flipped.
This would be flipped over. That's right. If it was frequency response, it would be flipped over. So turn it upside down, and it's taking out that much at 80 hertz and taking out that much at 320 hertz. So I would almost expect to see a peak at 160, but it is a vinyl and fiberglass composite membrane. So there is some damping going on with that fiberglass. It isn't just a vinyl membrane resonating away. But anyway, the point is this by itself, you would not use as a broadband absorber. No. This is absolutely not for your treble whatsoever. And that's intentional. Also, when you are dealing with something that is this thin, you're not going to be able to do it. You got to pick one or the other. You either got to make it a tuned membrane, or you got to make it a broadband absorber, or a combo panel like their TAD panels, where you're kind of splitting the difference. But it is nice that this exists. We didn't talk about VersaTune low frequency last week because I didn't find it on the page, because the regular page mentions the hard side TAD and VersaTune, but I didn't pick up on the VersaTune low frequency, specifically this tuned membrane. So that is great.
By last week, he means 2 weeks ago.
The last time I was here. So that is great to know about. I kind of wish we did have price points. Maybe Jason could write back with actual price points, even if it's ballpark figures, just what someone might expect to pay.
So I guess when I talk about going direct to consumers, my frustration really comes in from RBH, when RBH
there's that.
fought so hard to stay dealer only, and the company has suffered. I think the company has suffered because of it, because they definitely sold like crazy when they were selling their EMF or whatever they were calling it.
What were those? EMP tech.
EMP
Man, I almost forgot that. I haven't said it in so long.
I know, it's been so long. So anyways, so this is a panel that's very thin, relatively compared to where it's absorbing. Usually we would expect many multiples of this thickness in order to get down to 80
And they
hertz.
do have traditional, just thick panels that is also available from them. So, I mean, I like everything he said is spot on. It completely makes sense. You want to look at the actual room. There is no one size fits all.
Right.
And sometimes what you're going to need is a different smattering of different types of panels to get the decay times that you're looking for.
I just, generally speaking, I don't agree with his assertion that there's already enough stuff in a room to absorb high frequencies. I think that's true. There
can be.
I think that's true if you are dealing with dedicated rooms that are meant to be, home theaters, and they tend to have plusher furniture, lots of carpet, drapes that maybe not even cover wall. They're just covering walls, not covering anything else. But in many rooms, you don't get anywhere near enough just passive absorption of high frequencies. Especially today, where
a lot of places it's hardwood or laminate floor,
right,
bare windows and concrete or marble construction or whatever. But what he's saying is right. You need to look at the room first. You can't just say, here's the panels you should put into any room willy-nilly. Right. You need to look at the room first and come up with the right plan. And
it's happened on this podcast too, where people have come to us and they've been like, "This is my room. How many panels should I add?" We're like,
"That's right.
I don't know, 2." 4 maybe. Maybe you need that much. You kind of have enough. So that does happen. You're right, but I think most of the time the answer is as many as possible. Greg just wanted to share a paper by Roger Sanders from Sanders Sound Systems. He explains why balanced sound equipment makes sense for large venues, but is unnecessary and can even have some minor disadvantages for home use. So thank you very much for that. I wrote an article recently about XLR cables talking about
there you go. One more resource people can look at.
That's right. Let's see here.
Let's finally get to some questions. We're almost halfway through this darn podcast.
Yeah, we don't really need to answer any questions here. We did that last week. John has an Amazon Fire HD8 Plus tablet. Okay.
That's what it's called, man. I can't help it.
Amazon Fire HD 8 Plus. 8
That's
plus what? Anyways, for whatever reason, he would prefer to sideload the apps rather than use Amazon's App Store whenever possible. Yeah, I think I skipped this question just simply because of this whole
I mean, this was
thing.
one I tried to answer via email for the amount that I could. I was like, you and Lee have Android phones. I don't have Android phones.
I know, but I don't ever sideload anything.
Well,
I sideloaded one thing onto a Kindle one time. And I generally am not interested in doing all that stuff, mostly because I am extreme, and you can ask Clint or anybody that's ever worked with me, I am extremely good at breaking things. Like, if you send me product, I will find the one that doesn't work. I just got some cycling gear, and they sent it to me, and I was like, it's got a hole in it. They're like, you're kidding me. I'm like, I took a picture of it. I'm like, look, it's got a hole in it. They're like, that's crazy. We'll send you another one, and send it back, because we've got to figure out what the heck happened. I don't know what to tell you. I break stuff. I get the broken ones. So me sideloading stuff doesn't happen. So anyways, he gets APKs, which is Android package kits, from apkmirror.com. These apps are often available for multiple different CPU architectures, and several of the apps he sideloaded won't work on his Fire tablet. So any tips for getting sideloaded apps to work on his Fire HD 8 Plus tablet? And my advice is to not sideload stuff, but that's just me. So the same thing happens on the Oculus Quest too, or whatever the one I have. There's ways of sideloading things so that you can get like beta versions of games and stuff that I would like to try. And as soon as I find out I have to sideload it, I'm out. I peace out on that.
Well, then you wouldn't have been much help anyway.
I know.
So for the bit that I could search for what the processor that is in the Fire HD 8 Plus tablet from Amazon, it is a 64-bit ARM processor. So the architectures are typically 32-bit ARM, 64-bit ARM, 32-bit, like regular x86 type CPU, or 64-bit x86 CPU. So you would go for the 64-bit ARM architecture version. Typically, you only have those 4 options if there are as many as that. So if it's anything, it's going to be that. However, Amazon doesn't use just regular Android. They use their Fire OS, which is a fork of Android. So what he's getting are regular Android apps that you would put on a regular Android phone or tablet. Whether that's going to work with Fire OS, sometimes it does. I mean, they are based on the same original software platform, but Amazon has forked Android to make Fire OS. So I don't find it shocking that some apps just don't work, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the technical reasons why or how to check beforehand whether one is going to work or not. I don't know, but it doesn't sound like
this
Tom
isn't
knows
really
that
the
one.
podcast to answer this
No,
question.
I threw it in there because I thought maybe you and Lee would have some insight that I didn't have. So that's as good as we can do.
Maybe Lee would have had some insight.
But maybe some listeners who know much more about it could help us out on this one. Because
we will pass your
the
emails
hosts,
along
cannot.
to John.
That's right.
Because that's how that's going to work. John also prefers to remove ads whenever possible. So for his Android TV and Fire TV devices, he uses a Wolf Launcher, which I've never heard of, to replace the default interface. Do we know any way to put Wolf Launcher on his Roku stick and TCL TV with Roku as well? No.
I could find no mention of it. I could find Wolf Launcher mentioned for Android TV and for Fire TV, but I found nothing about it being available for Roku. Doesn't mean it isn't, just means I couldn't find it. So again, if you, any listeners out there, know about this, just let us know. We'll pass it along to John, but John, don't know anything further on that one. Also, I saw plenty of reports about the Wolf Launcher getting blocked after a firmware update on an Android TV or a Fire TV device. And then, of course, they patch the Wolf Launcher to get it working again. But it seems to be that kind of, tit-for-tat approach going on there, because it is not an officially supported thing, and the OSs are blocking it occasionally via updates.
Well, I zoned out while you were answering that question. I just remembered I didn't silence my phone. So let's expect that to happen later.
Expect.
He finally has a question that I care about. He uses Crown XLI 800 amps, which are rated to output 200 watts into 8 ohms or 300 watts into 4 ohms, which is not how that's supposed to work, but whatever. For speakers such as the monoprice Monolith Encore T6 towers, which are spec'd at 4 ohms with recommended amplifier power of 50 to 180 watts, would his Crown amps be, quote, too much, unquote, or would they be fine? The Crown amps do have a gain knobs for each output channel, so he typically just leaves them turned all the way up and then adjusts his pre-pro trim levels if needed. We can't say it enough on this podcast, apparently, but that's not how electricity works. Okay, the amps aren't. And there was a question I answered recently on Reddit which was the same thing, which is that somebody was worried that if they unplugged their speakers or didn't plug speakers into their speaker terminals on their AV receiver, that somehow that the amplifier would blow up, that the power would just build up inside until it exploded. The power is not being pushed out from the amplifiers into the speakers, and the speakers use it, at whatever, use it at in that way. It is, think of it this, the receiver sends a signal to the speaker that says, I need you to move this much. And then the speaker says, in order to move that much, amplifier, give me this much power. And the amplifier says, yes, I will, or we are in trouble. Okay, those are the two possible responses. Okay,
the amplifier does not go, here's all the power I have, take it. It does not do that.
It does not do that. So think of your speaker, and this is not the best way to think of it, but it's not the full metaphor, but think of your speaker as the speaker wire as a straw, and your speaker is the one that's doing the sucking. Okay, so the amplifier,
it's like it's a spout. Yeah, you can sort of vary how much comes out.
So the speaker, it determines how much power it gets. So that's why we always say you cannot have too much amplifier power, but you can have too little. So the speaker can request power, and your amplifier can say, I do not have that. Instead, I'll give you everything I have, and you will still try to take more, and that's going to hurt me and then also you in the process.
Right.
Whereas if the amplifier has oodles of power, the speaker will never request more than the amplifier can provide. Therefore, you will always end up being fine, unless you have turned the volume knob up so high that you are telling the speaker, break yourself trying to be as loud as I want you to be, and the amplifier is like, this is going to happen. Just prepare, because it's going down.
Yeah, no. So long and the short of it is, Monolith Encore T6 towers connected to your Crown XLI 800 amplifiers, totally fine, completely fine, no worries whatsoever.
And this is where I think it gets funny. He's been strongly considering getting the HSU CCB8 speakers for a while now. That's HSU's high efficiency, which is 94 dB watts per meter. High power handling, 400 watts, 8-inch coaxial speaker. At $440 each after shipping, they're a bit more expensive than he initially liked to pay. He's still interested in DIY, so should he consider trying to spec out his own woofers and tweeters using this loudspeaker database? Is that something we could help him do, or is there an alternative to get the CCB8 performance at a lower price? This is the case. Like, think of it in this way, because everybody owns a car or another or a house or an apartment or, I don't know, a dog shed or something like that. If you understand that you can either buy the thing, right, or you can build the thing, and if you are the type of person who has to ask, how do I build the thing? You're in way over your head. Okay. And that's sort of where I think most people are when they start asking me about, or us about building their own speakers. Can I build my own speaker? What driver should I buy? I'm like, if you have to ask me what driver, you are so far away from getting the crossover right that you shouldn't even try.
Well, he even mentioned that he already had crossovers on hand and was trying to find drivers that would work with the crossovers that are on hand. And I was like, I saw a little bit of the specs on the crossover. I'm like, that's a crossover that's meant to go between a bass woofer and a mid-range driver, not between a mid-range driver and a tweeter. Because the frequency was just too low. So I was like,
so much more than just slapping components into a box. It is just so much more. This is why people go to college for this.
And this is beyond my knowledge level of like, because loudspeaker database, it's just like every commercially available driver that's out there. I wouldn't know how to filter that down properly.
No.
I just lack the knowledge, so that isn't something I would be able to help John do.
This is why those DIY prefab kits.
Well, and that's exactly...
Those are what you want.
Exactly where I would point you. So, I mean, really to get something very similar to what you're talking about, it's not a coaxial design, but it's still high efficiency, high power handling with an 8-inch driver. That would be from DIY Sound Group. DIY Sound Group has a kit called the HT8, 8 standing for the 8-inch driver. It is a horn-loaded tweeter. It's a two-way design. It's not crazy complicated, but it comes with, optionally, you can either get it where it's just the faceplate and the components, or you can get it with a flat pack to also make the cabinet. And to get all of that together, the components with the flat pack is $200 each. So that's definitely cheaper than buying the fully completed CC-B8. However, I would strongly recommend contacting DIY Sound Group before purchase, because there are some things you're going to want for this speaker that are not included in the kit, such as some stuffing for the cabinet. Not included. You're going to need some wires, which is not included. They don't actually, strangely, by default, include the circuit board for the crossover.
I know. I was just looking at that.
Because I mean,
those are just all the components, but there's no circuit board down there.
You could use like just a basic breadboard. That would work. You could put it together that way, and that's what some people do. But they sell the circuit board for like $10 each, or they'll put the crossover together for you for $20 each. So there's that option in there too. So I would just say, make sure you contact them to make sure you're really getting everything that you need. That doesn't come with speaker terminals either, because they don't know whether you want a recessed terminal cup or to just surface mount your binding post. So that little things like that are not included. So that'll increase the price marginally, maybe another $20-$25 or something like that. But we're basically looking at half the price. Now, of course, that is unfinished MDF. So whatever you want to do to finish these speakers, if you're hiding them behind a screen or behind a cloth wall, then maybe you don't finish them at all, and it's super cheap. Maybe you just put a basic black Duratex finish on there, and it's still pretty inexpensive. But that would be the one I would point you, DIY Sound Group. Unfortunately, everything there is out of stock right now. Like everything. Without an ETA on when it's coming back in. So not super helpful in the near term. I'm tempted to say just get the CC-B8s while they're still in stock, because HSU actually has some now, because they were out of stock and back ordered for a while, but they're back in stock now. So there's also CSS. CSS is very popular. The HT guys talk about them all the time for doing DIY speakers, but they don't really have a speaker that's an equivalent to the efficiency and output of this HSU or this DIY Sound Group. Anything
Why
that
does
they
this
have
guy need high efficiency speakers?
He's got a pretty big room. He's got a pretty big room. Does
he?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so
wasn't in here.
CSS doesn't really have anything that would be. They do have some that are higher output, but they're more expensive than the HSU CC-B8, even as a kit. So I think the DIY Sound Group one is kind of what you want, but I don't know how long you'll be waiting to get it. So I'm tempted to say just grab the CC-B8s. They're completely finished. You don't have to do anything. You plug them into your amplifier, and they're going to work right away.
All right. Yeah. And if you have a large room, high efficiency speakers with an external amp, I mean, you're never going to run out of power for sure. You might break the speaker. You might break the speaker before you run out of power. Carlos asks, is it a good time to upgrade his AV receiver yet? He's got a Denon X4300H and is running a 5.2.4 configuration. He doesn't really have any intention to go beyond 9 speakers, so would there be any benefit for him having IMAX Enhanced and DTS-X Pro? So the only reason to upgrade in my book right now to a new receiver that has HDMI 2.1 is to get the better, gaming features. To
get HDMI 2.1.
Yeah, I mean, there's really nothing else that the receivers are doing from the last year's receivers that are all that exciting. On
the audio side of things, and with a 9 speakers.
Odyssey Pro, or whatever they're calling it,
MultEQ-X, yes,
whatever,
is available.
It's available for receivers that are like 3, 4, 5 years old.
Anything that can use the Odyssey Editor app can use MultEQ-X if you wanted to spend $200 on that. But yeah, with a 9 speaker setup. So I want to flatly say DTS-X Pro is strictly for setups with more than 11 speakers. That is the only place where DTS-X Pro comes into play. If you are at 11 speakers or fewer, DTS-X Pro is not in the picture. So you would have no benefit from that if you're sticking with 9 speakers. There's absolutely no reason to worry about getting X6700H that has DTS-X Pro. It won't do you one bit of good when you have a 9-speaker setup. IMAX Enhanced, can I say no hard enough? I couldn't possibly care less about whether it has IMAX Enhanced or not, because the only thing I want to do with an IMAX Enhanced AV receiver is turn off IMAX Enhanced.
Turn off IMAX. Yeah. Well, I mean, if they ever did anything with it, that was any good. I mean,
I know.
I don't. It's nothing.
The only thing it could do is deliver DTS-X as normal or mess up your bass management. Those are the two options of what IMAX Enhanced could do.
You're either going to get the thing you already have,
That's right.
or you're going to get the thing you already have, but wrong.
In a worse version, yeah. So I don't see any reason for you to upgrade right now. I'm going to say I think you should wait because A, you've got an X4300H, which is no slouch of an AV receiver. The only reason to upgrade it is that you really, really want HDMI 2.1 for some reason, and we're still stuck in all the models that can do 9 speakers or more in Denon and Marantz' lineup with a single HDMI 2.1 input. Now, of course, you could spend $200 and add the 3-in, 1-out.
This is an example of somebody. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. The only other thing would be to get one of the Onkyo, Integra, Pioneer Elite. They're all sister models to each other. That would be the only other thing to possibly consider. So, I mean, if you need HDMI 2.1 right now, well, everything except the Integra is out of stock, and the Integra costs hundreds of dollars more for the Integra name and nothing else. So it's like, I think you should just continue to wait if you can.
Yeah. I'm not hearing anything. Well, he's got one more part of this question, so let's do that first. Yeah. So would he hear any sonic benefit from upgrading to, say, a X4700H or a X6700H? Now, yesterday I wrote an article. It's still in draft form, and I'm still going to tweak it a little bit. That essentially covers this exact thing. So a lot of times people, when they want to upgrade, the number one thing they want to know is that they're going to hear a difference, that something is going to be better, okay? Which, fair enough. There's people out there who will upgrade from last year's models to this year's model simply because they want to have the newest thing. And for them, that's all it's about. I just don't want to have last year's model. Full stop. Okay, that's fine. But for most of us, we want to know that we're getting something for our money. And so if he doesn't need it for the extra features, which is what his first question was, will he get a sonic benefit? And the answer is, all things being equal, no. Okay, and I say that...
Going from an X4300 to an X4700, audio-wise, there's nothing there. There's nothing to be gained.
And I say all things being equal because what happens more often than not is people have set their receiver up. They have selected whichever upmixing that they're going to use on whatever things, and then they never touch the remote again except to turn it on, off, and adjust the volume. Everything else happens automatically with their harmonies or whatever. And then they get their new receiver in, they plug it in, and they go through the setup process again, which maybe the room corrections comes out a little bit different than it did last time, but do they go back and make sure that every single setting is exactly the same? Is every single upmixing exactly the same? Is everything exactly the same? Because if it is, it should sound exactly the same. There is the amplifier section, which is what he's asking about here. Is the amplifier section going to make this better? And the answer is no. Will you hear a difference? Maybe, and it's not going to be because of the receiver. It's going to be because you changed some of the settings, you didn't put them. You didn't put them back exactly.
Not
the same
inherently.
way.
My advice to him would be: let's wait for the X4800H. That'll have more than one HDMI 2.1 input on it, and maybe support some other little HDMI 2.1 things. Who knows? This quick media switching or whatever that nobody seems to do yet. Maybe it'll have that thing. So that's what I would do. I would continue to wait a little bit longer.
Yeah. You guys are going to hear what sounds like a Coke or beer opening up. It's just it's a seltzer water that I'm going to open here in a second. But after claiming I will not need any extra liquid during this, I am already needing extra liquid. So, Aras. First up, when Aras went to Expona Audio Expo, he heard the Per Listen audio demo of their THX Dominus speakers. He was floored by them, even though they were set up in a small hotel room that was clearly not the intended room size for those speakers. They made him question whether his CAF reference series purchase was a mistake. Aras and his wife are still house hunting, but most of the houses they are looking at have a similar size living room, about 15 by 20 or so, with some slightly higher or lower ceilings. He's heard our many, many subwoofer recommendations, and we typically seem to lean towards trying to recommend the most affordable option, which he assumes is because we figure there's no need to go beyond that to hit full reference volume in a given room size. But he just really, really wants either a pair of SVS PB16 Ultras or a pair of JTR Captivators, either the sealed RS1s or maybe the 18-inch ported 2400. I'm not clicking on these things because they just sound too. It sounds like my browser would have to expand to such a size in order to
They big.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be able to see anything else. The physical size and the price are not a problem. He wants to upgrade over his 15-inch Velodyne from 8 years ago. So to come at that from a different angle, is there actually any potential downsides to getting huge output subwoofers like these for a not gigantic room? Aside from price and the physical size, weight of the subs, is there a size or weight of the subs? Could there be any downside to the audio quality?
So I wanted to start with one thing, which is I haven't seen very many living rooms anywhere that are an enclosed room.
That is true. Yes,
that's
he's talking about a living room. But
he's talking about a living room, which I to me, there's usually a permanent opening to a living room. It might have somewhat of a closure down to a doorway size or a double doorway size, but it's not usually an enclosed room. So it's not that we're dealing with 15 by 20 by 9 or something like that. We're dealing with plus whatever open air is available. A lot of houses today, of course, are open concept completely, and you're dealing with way more space than that.
We've said a number of times, though, pressurizing that entire space will cause more problems than it solves.
It's unpleasant. It's going to be unpleasant for anybody else in the house.
It's going to be unpleasant for your dishes, too, which will rattle, because I have done this. I have accidentally turned my subwoofer up so loud that I pressurized my entire house, essentially, back when I lived in Jacksonville. I didn't have a huge house. I think the whole thing was like 1,900 square feet, but there was it's like a circle with a wall in the middle, which had the living room, the family room, the dining room, and the kitchen kind of in a circle. And then there was a long hallway that went down to all the bedrooms. And this was when my kids were really young. And I think one of the kids got back there and turned the volume of the subwoofer up. And I was watching Transformers, and it was amazing. I was like, oh, my God, this is so amazing. And my wife came in, and she's like, every dish in the kitchen is rattling. What the heck is going on in here? So, I don't know that you really want to pressurize this entire space.
Indeed. But, I mean, the short answer is you can have a massive overpowered subwoofer in a much smaller room, and it's fine. You just have to turn the volume way down. I've got dual PC13 Ultras, now upgraded to the PC4000 amplifiers. But, when they were the PC13 Ultras with their original amps, I've got them in an enclosed, small, 10.5 by 11.5 by not even 8 foot tall room with doors on it. So much smaller than this living room. Now I've got, dual PC13 Ultras in there, and I had their volume with the original amps turned up to 4 out of 100. And it was fine. They worked absolutely fine to hit reference volume. So you can put these monster subs in your living room. That's not going to be a downside to the audio quality. So from that perspective,
but it's also not going to be an upside. That's the thing that that bothers me about this. The idea that you're going to put massive subs in here and somehow they will sound better.
I mean, he just wants them. So.
Well, and that's fine. You know what? If it's, to me, this is very much akin to buying a car with a massive engine and a specific paint job. You're like, I'm never going to go that fast, so I don't need a massive engine. The paint job really doesn't do anything to make the car any better. I just like it, but I'm willing to pay more for both those things because it makes me feel good.
Yep.
If you admit to me and to Rob and to the world that you are only buying the big subs because you want to have large subs, and you realize that they will sound absolutely no different than subs half their size and half their cost.
I really don't think you're going to hear a difference in sound quality from your Velodyne.
Not if you properly calibrate them.
From your 15-inch Velodyne that you already own. I don't anticipate you hearing and noticing other than going from 1 to 2. That's going to be a big change, going from 1 sub to 2.
You may hear something, but that's only going to be between your ears. It's not going to be outside of your ears. You'll convince yourself that something is better, but it's not objectively true. Yeah,
but that's okay. I mean, he's saying if he gets them, will he hurt something? Will he be hurting his performance? And the answer is no. You won't be hurting your performance.
The only thing that I can say that might the only downside to overbuying your subs, in my mind, is if you use the auto on function of your amplifiers. Sometimes if you turn the volume down so low on your subs, the input, you have to be careful about the input voltage that's coming from
it's not going to detect
receiver
and turn them on.
It might,
also, with them being this physically large and heavy, you might not be able to position them in all the places that you could put smaller subs that are adequate for your current room size but are smaller. You might be able to position better. So that's something
not
to consider.
Might, I think will be able to position better.
Probably.
So if you're not going to, if you want to be able to put them in the right place so they sound the best, so there's another sonic downside. If you have to put these two subs in, specific locations because of their size, but smaller subs, you would have more placement options, which could give you better, sonic benefits. There's another whatever. So anyways, if you were to compare the sound quality of the PB16 Ultra or JTR Captivator to the sound quality of something smaller like a SVS 2000 series in one of these living rooms, would there be any difference? He says Jason Larson over at Audioholics leans heavily on objective. James, whatever I say, Jason. Whatever.
You said Jason.
I saw the sun at the end of Larson.
There you go.
It just went everywhere. James Larson over at Audioholics leans heavily on objective measurements and doesn't seem to be prone to hyperbole or overly subjective opinions. But even he has remarked on certain subs having the best bass he's ever heard. You know what you can't do in a review? Not say that.
Right.
That's just not how it works. You can't, in a review, say, this bass is exactly the same as every other bass I've ever heard, just louder. No one's allowed to say that because you will never get another sub for a review. But I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying that that's true. He's just worried about the quality of the sound, and he's thinking maybe these flagship level subwoofers will have more to offer over the 2000 series than just sheer output and extension. It's just that they don't, though. Blanche.
So I mean, I will say,
flat is flat.
Yeah, there is such a thing as it being possible for one subwoofer to have better quality bass than another. That is a possible thing. I have heard subs that, in essence, they aren't doing their job properly. All right? The signal says stop playing, and they don't. They keep making sound for another second and a half, or they aren't actually accurate to the signal. It said, play this note this loud, and it did something slightly different than what the signal asked it to do. So is it possible for, hypothetical subwoofer A to actually produce objectively better bass than hypothetical subwoofer B? Yes, it's possible, because subwoofer A might do something, in effect, wrong. But when we're talking about these subs, no.
Yeah, all these subs, okay, these subs are all designed to have a flat frequency response down to a certain hertz.
With very low group delay. Very low group delay. Even at the lowest. But the difference,
and you can look at SVS, the difference is output. It just keeps going up as your subwoofer gets bigger. And these, I assume the JTRs are going for the same thing. Even if they do have a bass boost someplace, you're gonna run Odyssey or you're gonna run Dirac or something, and it's gonna either take that out or you're going to put in your own, and it will adjust that output to fix that. What Rob's talking about is just objectively comparing, without EQ of any kind, a subwoofer that is just nonlinear. You take a nonlinear subwoofer with
has distortion or overhang or something like that. All are different
port
types
noise.
of distortion, types of doing it wrong.
Yeah, and that's not what we're talking about here. Well, and I know you want us to give you permission to buy these big subs, okay? And the answer is no, you cannot. You cannot buy the big subs unless you admit you're only buying them because it makes you feel good and you get a little tingle in that little special place, wherever that place may be in your body, that you get for having the big sub. And that's fine. But it's not because it sounds better.
Yeah,
it's not because it's going to be any different in your room.
That, like the SVS 1000 Pro series now costs as much as they do, is the 1000 Pro series is now providing the type of output that the old 12 Ultra series used to. The
so
entry
crazy.
level. The entry level is now providing what the flagship at one point.
They're going to have to go down to like 100 series. They're going to have to come out.
I kind of wish they would do it doesn't have to be that good, SVS. You could your entry level could be considerably worse than that, and we would still recommend it because the price is lower.
I do wish that we had like that STF type of subwoofer.
I know.
That HSU used to get. That
the
was like a
closest we've
really
got are the
good
RSL speedwoofer now. So.
Right, the speedwoofer is the one that we would have to recommend, but something that goes down really cleanly to like 35 or 30 hertz, but it's like $350.
Yeah,
you know what I
but
mean.
I did
that
want to
sort of thing.
say in this case, like he's saying, like he's thinking 2000 series is where we would point him. If that were an enclosed room, he's absolutely right. But again, I don't know many living rooms that are enclosed, so it might be that a 2000 series, especially if it were an SB 2000 Pro or something like that, we would be telling you, okay, if we actually knew the full volume of air that you're contending with, that might not be enough. You might want to
say buy a bigger sub than that. We could say it. We've said it before.
I'm gonna just stop bearing the lead and say I think you should probably get some PC 4000s because that's probably crazy overkill. It's almost certainly enough to pressurize your entire house, but
you'll be able to move them around.
You'll be able to move them around. It costs less. It comes with the feet. Like a PC 4000s, a pair of those, I think, is where I want to point you. But anyway, we've got a few more questions to hit on this.
Until we get to the full size of your room, we don't know. Yeah. So one thing he's seen mentioned is how SVS achieves their output levels with smaller diameter drivers by having lots of driver excursion. JTR subs are designed for smaller movements of the drivers by using larger diameters. Does that make a difference to the quality of the sound? No.
I mean, again, it's what has been done in practice, right?
Yeah.
Because if this were a case of, well, we used a smaller diameter driver, we try to make it play louder than it really can, so we move it so far that it starts bottoming out or making creaking noises, well, that's a bad thing. So is it possible to have overexcursion of a driver? Yes, it is theoretically possible. Does SVS do it? No, they don't. So it's, again, what has been done in practice. But what it boils down to is he's like, am I going to hear a difference in the quality of my bass? And the answer is no. With these ones that you're talking about, the answer is no. Again, I really don't think you're going to hear any difference in the sound of the bass from the Velodyne 15-inch that you already have.
Yeah, and I know that's not what you want to hear, but I'm sorry. That's just the case. So if we were in his shoes, would we go with SVS or pay more for the JTR? I don't know, man. Can you maybe read between the lines over here?
I already said what I would do. I pay less than either of the ones you mentioned. I get some PC 4000s. That's what I would do.
I will wait until I see what the size of your room is.
Yeah.
So, and he promises his dual subs will not end up both at the front of the room. It drives him nuts when he sees that. He also got a good chuckle when Tom mentioned how interior designers will freak out over seeing speakers, but then there's a big humidifier out in the middle of the room. I am funny, you're right. And lastly, he says, what about the new subwoofer offerings from Per Listen? They're out of Aras' budget. Audioholics and others have high praise for them. Worth saving up for. I'm going to already say no. I don't think. I haven't seen them, but I can't imagine. Subwoofers are just so different than every other speaker out there that I have a hard time saying, like, if the subwoofer is big enough that it can pressurize your space, or capable enough to pressurize your space, and it has all the proper performance, meaning flat frequency response, good transient response, everything else, of all the stuff that we recommend, I'm just like, I don't care which one you buy, I would buy the cheapest one. Whatever the cheapest one is that fits all those criteria that
and I'm willing to say looks can count, if you just don't want a gigantic flat black
but it's not
box,
like
fair.
these boxes are any less black than anything else.
They're
These are
black
just
and
black
gigantic,
boxes.
and they're all available in gloss black if that's what you want. The Per Listens are, of course, THX Dominus rating, and these other ones don't have the Dominus certificate on it. But
you don't have a Dominus room, so who cares?
That's right. So I think that's it. They
have a neat website, though. This is a neat website. I like it.
I'd point you to some PC 4000s.
Oh, and it's got a weird port thingy.
There's a push-pull going on with the Per Listens.
Is that what it is?
Push-pull, yeah.
Whatever. Stupid. Mike says he found our podcast during the first year of the pandemic. He came across a great deal on a slightly used Sony VW695 ES projector, and he snatched it up before he even had a room ready or any idea what to do with the audio side of things. That seems to be a common occurrence. I bought a TV. What kind of sound bar should I buy? Oh, I bought a sound bar. It sucks. What kind of speaker should I buy? But when he got the projector home and tested it out on a bed sheet, he was so blown away that he immediately started looking for surround sound advice, and he found us. He bought a Denon X4700H dual SVS SB2000 Pro subs and a full SVS Ultra speaker system. He loves it all, and he says he learned so much. His home theater isn't complete, but today's questions are about his living room.
Different rooms.
Different room. All that was a lead up to a right turn. Mike's living room is an open concept space. There's an open stairway going up and an open stairway going down to the basement. So he's dealing with all the cubic feet of the air, just like all of it. His wife recently bought a new TV stand, and its width and placement would make tower speakers a no-go, which is perfectly fine with me. Bookshelf speakers will easily fit on either side of the TV. There are large windows to the right and directly behind the main seats, and there's a large stone fireplace to the left that sort of visually separates the living room from the kitchen and dining area, but it's all open. They've got a couple of rugs that are couch and chairs and shades over the windows, but that's about it for anything remotely absorptive. It's hardwood floors, windows, stone, drywall, wood paneling, and some large mirrors throughout the whole space. So, yeah, reflective.
Flat and reflective and hard.
So he already has Denon X1600H receiver that he can use. They just want a stereo 2-channel setup with subs, not surround sound in here. And this is where they do most of their music listening. It's important to them that the music fills the whole open area and sounds good whether they're sitting on the couch or standing or moving around. So there's some pictures. If you're on YouTube, it's pretty well described in the text here. So there are windows kind of everywhere in the stone.
Yep, it's open, it's bright, it's hard, it's flat. There's a stone fireplace in the middle of it.
Got a little rug in front of his his couch, but it's not.
The cat is the most absorptive thing in there.
That's right. Look at the little kitty. Look at the little kitty. He's got a rubber duck on the ground too. It looks like too. So let's start with subwoofers. He's heard us recently recommend the SVS PC4000 for someone with a large, open, irregularly shaped room, somewhat like his. But that person said they only cared about one seat and they had very limited placement options. Since Mike and his wife want music to sound good everywhere in the space, would dual PC Pro cylinders be better in terms of uniformity? Budget would dictate whether dual PC 2000 Pros or just a single PC 4000. So what option would be better in this case? So open, irregular space with openings that go to everywhere. Unpredictable bass, no idea of where to place dual subs. So this is a case. This is actually a case where the problem I see you having is having volume be relatively the same throughout the entire thing.
That is going to be a challenge. Yeah.
So this is almost like. Now, I obviously you have an attic and you have a basement, so there are putting things in ceilings and stuff like that becomes much more challenging because of that. So you do a lot of your music listening in here. I would go with the single subwoofer, and first of all, I don't think the 2000s are big enough.
Obviously not to pressurize the whole thing, but it doesn't sound like they're cranking it like.
We don't know. I didn't read anything in there that said that. I mean, they could be throwing raves for all we know.
That's true. It's true.
So,
it's really tough because, if you have the single subwoofer, then I don't know how much placement flexibility there is. He's keen on this.
It doesn't look like there's any placement flexibility. There's not a whole lot of space in here to put a subwoofer full stop, much less two
keen on the
them.
Cylinders, which I am all for because the cylinders
I think he wants to put it
be
in that front right corner.
Probably.
So there's a table there. But it's kind of out from the wall.
Maybe to the left of the couch, in front of sort of the window little wall area. Maybe
they can lay it down behind the couch, below the window.
So,
but putting two of them back there, or even in either of these two spaces, is a no way.
You wouldn't stack both of them up. It's just what I'm coming at is if you have the one sub, you place it in one of these locations where maybe it works. If that doesn't work out, there's nothing you can do. You're just stuck with that performance. If you got the two subs, there's a chance. We can't predict where to put them, but there's a chance that it could be more even.
I don't even know where. Like, for what he's doing, you want to have when you run your Odyssey or whatever it has on there.
What would be X1600?
Yeah, X1600. When you run Odyssey, you put the microphone at that couch, so you're going to calibrate everything for that couch.
That's true.
But then you're asking for it to also sound good everywhere. Those are two different things.
I mean, this might be a case where running Odyssey isn't the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because he's not going for the most focused sound just at the seat. It's like you just want wide, even, uniform dispersion anywhere. So I mean, it might end up that one subwoofer is in the hall and the other subwoofer is in the dining room, and neither subwoofer is in the living room, and that ends up with the best results. It could be very challenging for the trial and error, because we can't predict where the two subwoofers ought to go in here. I'm just coming at it from the side of, if you only have one subwoofer, you've got no chance of making it uniform if one spot doesn't work. At least you've got a chance if you've got two.
If you've got places for two subs, you at least have two spots that you can try.
That's right. Yeah.
So
I don't know. So we're okay. Well, the two of us are in disagreement, because I was leaning.
I would go with the PC-4000.
Okay, and I would get the two PC-2000 Pros, assuming you don't actually want to crank this up to over 100 decibels, because they're not going to be able to fill your whole house to that level. Although PC-2000 Pros are not going to break themselves. You can turn them up as loud as they go and they won't break.
So he really wanted to pick up a pair of KEF LS50 Meta speakers, but he's concerned about their output capabilities and whether they'd be able to contend with this much cubic footage down into the crossover region. Could he just use a higher crossover frequency, or does this room dictate that he ought to get a pair of bookshelf speakers like the KEF, a different pair of bookshelf speakers than the KEF LS50 Metas? This is a case where those high efficiency speakers that we were just talking about with the other dude make a lot more sense.
I was like, the HSU CCB8s seem like a really good option in here. Now, you will want to take note the CCB8s are physically larger than the KEF LS50 Metas.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, the LS50 Metas are about a foot high, 8 inches wide, and 11 inches deep, whereas the HSU CCB8s are 15 inches high, 10.5 inches wide, and 12.5 inches deep. So not crazy larger, but...
You should still be able to fit that next to that TV.
Oh, it would absolutely fit on the TV stand. I'm not worried about that, but just in case the size was part of it, do be aware they're larger, but you kind of need that. I do kind of want higher efficiency, higher output capability. I love the LS50 Metas, but in the room that you have, you're not going to get everything out of them anyway.
Right.
Your room is more of a limiting factor than what the speaker is putting into the room, to be honest. So I would save a bit of money, because the CCB8s are $880 a pair.
And maybe you get two PC-4000s now.
Well, it wouldn't quite get you to that, but I don't know. Maybe,
you don't know.
Maybe two PB-3000s if you want to go to the boxes or something like that. But I think those CCB8s are actually a really good choice, the HSUs. So
yeah, a high efficiency speaker makes, because you're trying to fill up this entire space, and things are going to be reflecting all over the place anyways. And like Rob said,
and you're still getting the
your room is
coaxial
a limiting
design.
factor.
The coaxial design of the CCB8s is throwing that sound out evenly in every direction. That's as good as you can ask for the speaker itself to do. What the room ends up doing to that sound, it's going to be a bit unpredictable. It's going to be hard to say, but the speaker itself is giving you your best shot at getting what you want.
All right. Dale has a Marantz SR6013 receiver. He's currently running a 5.2.2 configuration, which will expand to 5.2.4 when SVS runs their next sale on some prime elevation speakers. When he wants to fill his whole space with some music playing, he likes to use the multi-channel stereo listening mode. This says that excuse me, stereo left and right signals are expanded to all speakers and channels.
Mm-hmm. That's what it says.
I just got a scratch in my throat. And indeed, if he puts his ear up to each of his 7 speakers, all of them are outputting sound, including his center. So he wants to understand, how is the original left-right signal being duplicated, routed, and or mixed? If it were as simple as all 3 left speakers play the left signal, all 3 right speakers play the right signal, and that would leave a center channel silent, right? But it doesn't. So what exactly is happening to the original signal in multi-channel stereo mode? All the left speakers are playing the left stuff, all the right speakers are playing the right stuff, and the center is playing both, from what I understand. But because you can't just additively take the left and right signal and put them together, because you'll end up with that being louder than everything else. Mm-hmm. So there is a algorithm in there that modifies that to make sure that the volume stays the same relatively to other speakers.
Anything that is equally in the left and right channels gets played by the center, the same as what Dolby Pro Logic used to do. It
Right.
would look at the left and right signals, basically subtract one from the other, and anything that was different between them doesn't get played by the center. It stays in the left and the right. Anything that is identical between the left and right channels gets played out of the center speaker. However, Denon and Marantz' multi-channel stereo is not quite the same as other brands' all-channel stereo.
Right.
It isn't quite as simple as all the speakers on the left play the left channel and all the speakers on the right play the right channel. I know this because I kind of wished that were the case, because that would make measuring individual speakers easier. Because then I could just physically unplug all but the speaker that I want to measure and throw it into all-channel stereo mode and just use a stereo test tone, and that would work. But it doesn't work. There is a little bit of processing going on in what comes out of the surround and the surround back speaker versus the front channels. It isn't just straight duplicating every single sound and putting it hard left and hard right. So it's not doing Pro-Logic processing or Dolby Surround upmixing processing. It's not doing that type of thing. It's not putting like reverb onto it or messing with the phase or something like that. But there does seem to be a little bit of a filter being placed on what goes into the surround and the surround backs. There's a little bit of high frequency roll off. There's definitely low frequency roll off, and the overall volume seems to be a little bit lower. So it seems as though what they're trying to achieve with the multi-channel stereo listening mode is like this: all my speakers are making sound, it's enveloping, but it's not a literal just duplication into all the speakers where you would end up asking your AV receiver to send equal power to all speakers, which can be a bit of a challenge. That might be the reasoning why they actually did that. So there is some filtering going on. There's some high frequency roll off, low frequency roll off for sure, and then overall the volume's a little bit quieter in the surround back. But other than that, there's no weird processing going on. It's just, it's not quite all channel stereo. I know that because I wanted to use it for measurement purposes and it didn't work. So yeah, that's what's going on.
All right. Raph has a Denon X8500H receiver. His configuration is only 5.1, although he's using 4 subwoofers for that 0.1 channel. MK Sound THX speakers all around with 4 SVS SB3000 subs.
Nice.
He's considering changing to the Onkyo TX RZ50 if he can find it in stock anywhere.
I know.
Pretty much strictly for Dirac. Do we think that would be worth it? No. Sorry to burst your little bubble there. I actually, after Andrew explained to me what he had to do in order to get Dirac working, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. I just want to plug in a microphone and make it and have it do the thing. But Dirac is much more finicky.
Yeah. I mean, other than having more HDMI 2.1 ports built into it, which the Onkyo
There's
does
a lot of reasons to want to get another receiver.
Sure.
Room correction of equal power is not one of them. And
But also,
I think
like,
that Dirac and Odyssey at this level are the
his
basically the same thing.
X8500H can do a lot more than the RZ50 can do.
Yeah.
It's actually a considerably more capable AV receiver. So this would be a downgrade in several ways. And I mean, you can add the 3-in-1-out switch if you just need it more HDMI 2.1 ports. So that I don't really consider a huge thing.
It's
what you could do. You could get MultEQ-X if you want all.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you want all the individual channel, being able to measure just one channel again instead of having to measure all channels again, which is a bit of a frustration with Odyssey. But if you want to be able to just measure one channel again, change one channel at a time, try things back and forth, even on your X8500H, which does not have 2 completely different speaker configurations. MultEQ-X lets you use the reference and flat settings for the same purpose. You can have different save files in the reference and the flat and change on the AV receiver very quickly that way. So I actually think you are the perfect candidate to spend that $200 on MultEQ-X and add that to your X8500H rather than completely changing over to Dirac. All the things you want to be able to do with Dirac on the manual side of things, you can do with MultEQ-X. So I would do that. That's a lot cheaper.
So this is like with the second or third person in this podcast has asked us about upgrading their receiver. And I am starting to lean towards that exact same advice. I actually meant to say it for the last person. But when you're looking to upgrade your receiver and you really don't have a good reason to, but you clearly want to spend some money to get to
Right.
do something to make your sound better, this is the thing. This is the money hole to throw your money into.
Sure.
Because it's really, I mean, yes, I think $200 is a ridiculous sum of money to pay,
especially
for
when it's
MultEQ-X.
stuck with that one AV receiver.
Yeah,
but
I think it's
whatever.
ridiculous. But you clearly want to spend some money.
Yeah.
And I think that if you want to spend some money and you actually want to get something for it, MultEQ-X is for you.
Sure.
Because it really isn't for anybody else.
That's right. I mean, to be clear, I don't really think you need to do anything. But
Yes.
if what you wanted was all the manual manipulation that Dirac lets you do, then that's what MultEQ-X is for.
He says in the specs, the Denon X8500H lists the signal-to-noise ratio at 102 dB, while the Onkyo lists the RZ50 lists it at 106 dB. Is this something that would be audible? I don't know. Rob, would it be audible?
Well, we got to be clear
sound
here
like
because where they're listing the signal-to-noise ratio figure is for the analog inputs. This is not the signal-to-noise ratio figure for the amplifiers. So this is for the analog inputs, which I'm betting you're probably not even using for anything at this point. So in that case, it definitely wouldn't be audible. Also, when we're just talking about the line level inputs, because that's what these signal to noise ratio figures in the spec sheet are related to in both cases, both for the Denon and the Onkyo. That's what the signal to noise ratio spec is for, is the line level analog audio inputs. Would 102 versus 106 be audible? No, considering that the maximum is 96 decibels on a line level signal. So that's not going to be audible regardless of what the situation is. If we want to look at a spec, because they don't give the signal to noise ratio specs for the amplifier sections for either the Denon or the Onkyo, but they do give total harmonic distortion plus noise, and on that one the Denon is rated at 0.05% total harmonic distortion plus noise when driven to the full 150 watts 2 channels driven. The Onkyo is 0.08% total harmonic distortion plus noise, and that's driven to only 120 watts 2 channels driven. So the specs on the Denon are superior, not audibly so, but they are. So if you were worried that the Onkyo was going to like outperform your Denon X8500H and be quieter or less distortion, nope, not the case.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be.
No.
I mean, just the price points.
Indeed.
The original price points would suggest as much. But hey, MultEQ-X, only $200.
That's right.
Practically a steal. Enrique, which projector would we recommend for $1,000 or less? It'll be replacing a 1080p Vankyo?
Yeah, it seems to be exclusively on Amazon.
Oh. And projecting onto a 110-inch screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure Rob has many. Based on the number of links I see here,
Well,
he has 5.
It's because there are basically 3 different categories of projector that you might consider. So I'll start at the bottom of the list that I put here, which is if you want to actually be able to put 4K resolution, you can do that for under $1,000 now. ViewSonic's PX701 4K is a 1080p DLP chip that gets used 4 times per frame to actually put 4K resolution onto the screen. It's $900. It checks all those boxes. Now, what is the ViewSonic PX701 4K not terrific at? Doesn't have terrific black levels, doesn't have terrific contrast, doesn't have terrific color accuracy, and has no lens adjustment on it. I think it has a 1.1 times zoom, which is essentially 0. No lens shift at all. So it's like, well, it's not the greatest in terms of picture quality, but it does the most pixels. And sometimes that's all people want is the most pixels. It's compatible with HDR signals. It really cannot show you HDR. But for under $1,000, you can actually have 4K resolution. So I'll mention it. Now, the ones I would probably point a movie lover towards would be BenQ's HT2050A. That goes for $750. It is a 1080p projector. It is standard dynamic range. It does not do 4K. It does not do HDR. But it does have pretty darn decent black levels for anything under $1,000. The wire cutter compared to every projector out there for under $1,000. And like the BenQ HT2050A has the best black levels in contrast. It has darn good color accuracy for standard dynamic range. almost 100% of Rec 709, which is what you want for HD content. So in terms of what is the most accurate, what is the most movie-like, black levels, contrast, color accuracy, this is it. It does not do 4K or HDR. That's what you're looking at for $750. There is a short throw version of the HD 2050A that is called the HD 2150 ST for short throw. That goes for $900. It just lets you physically place the projector closer to the screen. Those BenQs, the HD 2050A has a little bit of vertical lens shift, which is rare for a projector, a DLP projector, particularly at this lower price point. But it's got like a 1.3 times zoom, so it's reasonably flexible for setting it up. The short throw version of it, the 2150, does not have any vertical lens shift. You're stuck with physically positioning it to hit your screen. But if you need that short throw, at least it's available. So then there are a couple of projectors that fall in between. These ones are 1080p resolution. They do not shift around the pixels to give you 4K, but they do have compatibility with HDR. They have compatibility with 4K HDR signals, so you can have a 4K HDR signal that goes into these, and they'll show you an image on screen. They just will stick at 1080p resolution, and of course HDR doesn't really look that different from SDR. So that is, again, BenQ's TH685 that goes for $800. That's probably your best option. It has a little bit of vertical lens shift. It has the most accurate colors and decent black levels and contrast, so that would be the one to look at there. $800, not that much more, so that's a pretty reasonable pick. If you need short throw, BenQ doesn't have a short throw version of the TH685, so you would go over to Optima. They have their GT1080 HDR for $850, but that one has no lens adjustment, and it's not as accurate as the BenQ. So I'm more keen on getting a BenQ in this price range, and you can choose whether you want to be compatible with HDR or not. Links in the show notes.
All right, you're done. All right, great. Infinite Gary. Gary was...
Tom's going to retain all of that for the future.
That went straight into the memory banks. I got all that. I'm going to remember those model numbers, prices, the whole thing.
You can look at the show notes if you need to.
I would have to. Mm-hmm. Infinite Gary was looking through his Apple TV's 4K settings and came across the calibration color balance thing. What's that? What does it do? His TVs all have been professionally calibrated, so should his Apple TV calibration be used at all in his... No. No.
So Gary didn't remember when this came out because everybody's
forgotten about it. Is this the thing with the phone?
This is the thing with the phone?
Yes. Okay, I have a link for this one.
All right. You have to have an iPhone. This only works with iPhones. It only works with iPhone. CNET put it well. They're like, if you have an iPhone that has Face ID, then that's new enough to do it. If your iPhone is old enough that it doesn't have Face ID, then it probably can't do this thing. But you have to have an iPhone to use this. It puts a test pattern up on your TV, and it measures it with your phone, and then it changes some of the color settings in the Apple TV 4K. It doesn't work for any other source. This is only quote-unquote calibrating the Apple TV 4K as the source, and it also isn't super accurate and doesn't do a terrific job. So everybody's forgotten about it. If you have had your TVs already professionally calibrated, you absolutely do not need to mess around with this.
And even if you haven't, you probably just needed to put it into the right mode and go on with your life.
It was in the news cycle for a little while, and then, the hype completely died down.
I literally forgot about it until this
So did Gary.
I wrote that article and then forgot about it. I've never seen anybody do it. I've never seen... I mean, it's a gimmick.
Yeah.
Michael has an interesting conundrum and a puzzle to solve. How much time do we have left on this podcast? I don't know if I have time for a puzzle. He has a Lovesac couch with their Stealth Tech audio system built in. I would like to know how that sounds, honestly.
Well,
anyways, he really enjoys the 360 bubble of sound it creates, but the effect only works if you're sitting on the couch, which one would expect since the speakers are actually in the couch. He wants to retain the Stealth Tech bubble for the Lovesac, but also be able to have surround sound playing for the rest of the room. So he got the Sony HG-A9 wireless speaker system, and now he wants to be able to use both. Boy, that just sounds like a terrible idea, but let's go on. And the problem is that both are intended to be used with HDMI-ARC, ARC port from his TV. And of course, there's only one of those. Regular HDMI splitters do not work for splitting the ARC signal, and you cannot use an optical audio splitter because a Sony HDA9 only has 2 inputs, a regular HDMI input and the HDMI-ARC port, no optical. The Lovesac only has HDMI-ARC and optical, no regular HDMI input. So how does he get all this to work? I cannot imagine a situation in which I would want to have 2 speakers at varying distances from me playing the exact same stuff.
I know. Like, my solution was to just not use the Lovesac anymore and just use the Sony system.
But he's not going to do that.
But he's not
right?
going to do that.
But I imagine it would sound a little bit like everything's a little echoey around you.
And I mean, I'm not even sure if he's actually using them simultaneously or if he's choosing one or the other.
He is.
It sounds like he definitely.
Well, I don't understand where. So there are people not sitting on the couch when this happens, or do you only allow yourself to sit there and everybody else has to?
Yeah, I mean, he said he still wants to have surround sound for other people in the room while he's on the couch. So I don't know what the situation is. Maybe he lives in a party house and this is what's going on. To me, I would just not hook up the Lovesac anymore, and I just rely on the Sony. I would do
one or the other. I would physically unplug the HDMI cable from one to the other.
Switch back and forth.
Just switch back and forth. That's what I would do.
Nevertheless, I have I haven't used it in this scenario, but as far as I can tell, this might and should work as long as you're okay with topping out at HDMI 2.0, because I don't have a solution if everything needs to be HDMI 2.1. But
which kills the eARC.
Yes, this might work as long as we're sticking with HDMI 2.0, and that is Sewell's 4-in, 2-out Spider matrix switcher. Now, I'm showing the back of it on YouTube, so that's the 4 inputs there, the 2 HDMI outputs. Now, HDMI output B, they actually describe as like it'll take 4K resolution and downscale it to 1080p. So I'm thinking HDMI output B from this Spider, that can connect to the HDMI input, the regular HDMI input on the Sony system, because the Sony system has a regular HDMI input. And all we're worried about is the audio side of things. So HDMI output B from this Sewell Spider connected to the Sony system, that should be fine. HDMI output A stays at 4K resolution 60, HDMI 2.0 again, not going to work for 2.1, but that can connect to your television. And then you have the option. You can either run ARC out of your television into your Lovesac, as you are doing right now, or it'll actually take the HDMI audio and output it from an optical jack, and you can put the optical jack from HDMI output A on the Sewell Spider into the optical input of your Lovesac, because it has an optical input. So I do believe this should work. It will mean all of your sources get plugged into the Sewell Spider, not directly into the television. But I could not come up with a better solution than that, other than it's going to be some weird hinky thing of switchers and splitters and everything anyway. So I think the Sewell Spider should do what you need as long as HDMI 2.0 is okay for you. Other than that, we would say pick one or the other.
I would say pick one or the other, full stop, because I already said that. Last question, Vince. Maybe last question. That was faster than I thought. Vince has been agonizing for months over which in-wall speakers to get. Regular speakers and on-wall speakers are absolutely not options. It has to be in-walls. We'll be powering the setup with an Anthem MRX 1140 receiver. The system is for both movies and music. I don't know why people insist on telling me that.
It's a common thing. It's fine.
Know, but it doesn't make any difference. So you think that there's one speaker that does one better than the other?
That is a very commonly held assumption by audiophiles.
They're very wrong. He wants a neutral and articulate sound, easy to drive, and he's only really considering models with a fully sealed design. That's a mistake. That led him to the higher-end models from Paradigm and Focal, specifically the Paradigm CI Pro series and the Focal 1000 series. In talking to his local dealers, there's only $800 difference in the speaker package price, but the Focals would be on special order. So there'd be a hefty restocking fee if, for some reason, he decided to return them. The Paradigms would be easier to exchange. He was able to hear the Paradigm CI Pro speakers in the store demo, but only some music, no movie content. And while he was very happy with what he heard, he was blown away by Paradigm's flagship tower speakers and their beryllium tweeters. There's your mistake. Don't listen to a thing you're not allowed to buy.
The CI Pros do not have that. They're all aluminum drivers in the CI Pro series.
Yeah. So that tempted him over to the Focal 1000 series, since they seem to check all the boxes, including beryllium tweeters being fully sealed. The full speaker package isn't much more expensive than Paradigm's, but he hasn't heard them for themselves, and this is a lot of money either way. So he's hoping we can offer some practical insights into this decision. Well, we like Focal, generally speaking.
I mean, yeah, I would be shocked if you weren't satisfied with the sound coming out of the Focal 1000 series, but they are expensive.
Yeah, Paradigms, generally speaking, are a very neutral speaker. They're very flat.
Yes.
And if you like that, then there's no reason that you won't like the Focals.
My only question is, do we need to go all the way up to the 1000 series or the CI Pro for that matter? Because those are pricey speakers.
Right. Well, and the other thing is if you're going to spend that much on a speaker, like full stop, then limiting yourself to only speakers that are fully enclosed seems overly restrictive, because you can actually pay someone to enclose make the enclosure back there for a lot cheaper with another speaker. Because I mean, like Monoprice just came out with their THX in walls.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have any specs on them really all that much. We know what they're supposed to do, but there's not a whole lot there. But I guarantee you could pay someone to make sure that they have the right cubic space behind them in your wall, and fill that up with all the stuff you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
And
that's just it, because I mean, he it wasn't clear from his email. Like Tom and I, we 100% want essentially all in-wall and in-ceiling installations to have backer boxes or back cans if it's in-ceilings. We are big proponents of having rear enclosures. We don't like just cutting a hole in an existing wall, putting an open back in-wall speaker in there, securing it with the dog legs and calling it a day.
And then
we aren't fans. We aren't fans of that. We want rear enclosures. I love that the Focals have that rear enclosure just built onto it. I like that, but is it a necessity? No, it's not a necessity. It's fine to have a separate rear enclosure. For example, Focal sells separate rear enclosures for their 300 and 100 series. They're not integrated as just, one speaker that already comes with a sealed back, but they have rear enclosures for any of the other ones. They're an option. You got to pay a little bit extra, but the combined price of, say, a 300 series Focal with the rear enclosure is much less than the 1000 series, and you end up at the same place, which is a speaker with a backer box installed in your wall. So, I'm not sure exactly why, if this is because he's installing them himself and he wants it to be as easy as possible and he wants to cut the wall as little as possible. I can appreciate all that, but then I'm worried about, have you really investigated what's inside your walls? Because if you're thinking, this is going to be easy, I'm going to cut holes in my walls and these are going to be fully sealed speakers and I'm just going to plop them in there. It's like, you got to be real sure what's inside that wall, because if there's any pipes or wires or ducts or, fire block that you're not able to cut through. But I don't know any of that. Those details weren't in the email. So if this is more a thing of you're used to seeing in-wall speakers that are open backs, as we all are, and you didn't want that, you wanted a rear enclosure, we're saying you can either buy a rear enclosure from companies that sell them. Focal does, RBH does, KEF does, Paradigm does as well for their models that don't have it, or you can build a rear enclosure for ones that don't sell it, like the Monoprice monolith
or
speakers.
you can pay someone to do it, and it really isn't that much money.
Because if the walls are going to be opened up anyway, making the opening a little bit larger so that you can build the enclosure in there and then patching the drywall is not really any more drastically different than cutting the enclosure for the already sealed speaker. It's not that big of a deal to do it either way. So all of that said, if he's looking at this level of speaker, because I'm somewhat familiar with I'm definitely familiar with the Focal 1000 series. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with the CI Pro series. It might have been a different CI series from Paradigm. But if he's looking at this sort of level and he's willing to entertain this sort of price range, I'm not really sure I'm going to steer you far away from any of that. I think I have a reasonable idea of what he's going for if these are the speakers that he's considering. I would just say, I would be very surprised if you went with the focals and were disappointed with them. If you really, really want that backer box integrated, I wouldn't have a problem with, say, getting the 1000 series for the front three. I don't see any reason to pay so much as having 1000 series all around. It's just not necessary. Like, if you've got overhead speakers going in, you don't need beryllium tweeters in your Atmos speakers. Dear God,
right.
You don't need that. You don't need it in your surround backs. I could maybe get behind having them for your side surrounds. That's real iffy to me, especially when the 300 series is so darn close. So I would be tempted to say go with the Focal 300 series and save a pile of money, which hire somebody to put the backer boxes in for you, because that'll be way easier and cheaper. Or if you want to get the 1000 series across the front, use 300 series everywhere else and save a pile of money and just have the separate backer boxes installed. That's what I would do in a heartbeat. If you went Paradigm all around, I don't think you'd be disappointed either, to be honest, but I don't even know that you need to go to the CI Pro series again. You know, he was so concerned about having the backer boxes already built onto the speaker itself that he really limited himself in his choices. Do we even want to mention alternatives and add even more choices? There are some, but
just, you could say, I don't know.
Yeah, so MK Sound has in walls. They are fully sealed. You know, it's their THX Ultra certified, the S150 that we're all used to seeing in studios. They've got an in-wall version of that you can get that's already fully sealed. RBH that I talked about, their signature series has the backer boxes that basically come with it, and then Martin Logan also. Martin Logan in their Motion series in walls, they have full sealed enclosures on those as well. I'm not sure, I'm a lot less tempted to go with something that uses a ribbon tweeter in an in-wall because you just can't aim it. And you need to aim those tweeters, and when they're in walls you can't. So I'm not super keen on that, but it's another alternative out there that has a fully sealed back. I'd get some focals, and I'd get the 300 series, not the 1000. I'd use the cost savings to have somebody else put the backer boxes in. That's my solution.
Okay. What do we got left?
We have Kiran from India and Dan, and I think that's it. Dan has a whole bunch of questions, but that's it for the list.
All right. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Raph for going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and going to the PayPal donation site and doing that, as well as our 142 patrons over at patreon.com, including Dale.
That's right, Raph. Thank you very much for the PayPal donation, and a big thank you to our 142 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast, where you can sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. Dale, thank you for being one of those patrons.
Brandon, we want to thank him for sending some suggestions to me to help with my parents' remote, and Greg for sending a movie code.
That's right, Brandon and Greg. Thank you for supporting the podcast in those non-monetary ways, although the movie code is kind of a monetary thing, but there you go.
Yeah. We also got some notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going from Mike, Jason, Dale, and Dan.
That's right. We really do appreciate those notes of gratitude and encouragement. So Mike, Jason, Dale, Dan, thank you for those. Thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
Don't forget to run over to Amazon.com and buy my new book, Touch of Pain.
That's right.
If you want to get your questions answered on this podcast, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Mandry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AV Rant.
Now go out and listen to something.